power without the means to defend it is nothing but an illusion waiting to shatter. And no one understood this brutal reality better than Niccolò Machiavelli. He watched empires crumble, not from external conquest, but from internal weakness. States that outsourced their strength to others, only to discover that borrowed power always comes with invisible chains. Today, we're diving into one of Machiavelli's most ruthless principles. Never rely on others' armies. It sounds simple, almost obvious. But this law runs deeper than military strategy. It's about the very architecture of power itself. Because when you depend on someone else's strength to survive, you're not building an empire. You're constructing your own cage. Most people think strength is about having the biggest weapons or the most allies. But Machiavelli saw through that facade. He understood that true power isn't borrowed. It's built. It's not rented. It's earned. And the moment you hand over your ability to defend yourself to someone else, you've already lost the war before the first shot is fired. This isn't ancient history we're discussing. This is happening right now in boardrooms, in governments, in personal relationships. Every time you outsource your security, your income, your reputation, your survival to someone else's goodwill, you're making the same fatal mistake that brought down Italian city-states 500 years ago. The principle is devastatingly simple. There are only 3 types of forces you can rely on: your own, mercenaries, and auxiliaries. And Machiavelli's verdict is clear. Mercenaries will betray you when it benefits them. Auxiliaries will enslave you when they no longer need you. Only your own forces can be trusted, because only they share your fate completely. But here's what makes this law so dangerous to ignore. It's not just about armies. It's about every source of power in your life. Your skills, your networks, your resources, your reputation. The moment you become dependent on forces you don't control, you become controllable by others. And in Machiavelli's world, that's the beginning of the end. Let me paint you a picture of what this looks like in practice. Imagine you're a ruler in Renaissance Italy. Your neighbors are aggressive. Your people demand protection. You have 2 choices: spend years building, training, and maintaining your own military forces, or hire mercenaries, professional soldiers who come ready-made, experienced, and immediately available. The mercenary option seems obvious. Why waste time and resources building something from scratch when you can buy it ready-made? It's faster, it's efficient, it lets you focus on other priorities. Most rulers chose the mercenary path, and most rulers fell, because here's what they discovered too late. Mercenaries fight for money, not for you. Their loyalty extends exactly as far as their paychecks. When the enemy offers them a better deal, they switch sides. When the battle gets too dangerous, they retreat. When they become strong enough, they decide they don't need you anymore. But mercenaries aren't even the worst option. That distinction belongs to auxiliaries, foreign armies that come to your aid, powerful allies who lend you their strength. They seem like the perfect solution. Professional forces with proven track records, fighting alongside you against common enemies. The trap is invisible until it snaps shut, because auxiliary forces don't just fight for you. They fight with their own agenda, their own loyalty, their own chain of command. Win or lose, you end up under their influence. Win, and you owe them everything. Lose, and they abandon you to your fate. Machiavelli watched this pattern destroy Italy. City-state after city-state fell into the same trap. They outsourced their defense to professionals. They thought they were buying security. Instead, they were purchasing their own subjugation. The most brutal example came when King Charles VIII of France invaded Italy in 1494. Italian states had grown comfortable with their mercenary arrangements. Their hired soldiers had handled local conflicts efficiently. But when a real army arrived, led by a king who commanded genuine loyalty, the mercenaries crumbled. Legend has it that Charles conquered Italy with nothing more than chalk, marking the doors of houses where his soldiers would quarter. No battles, no sieges, no resistance. The mercenary armies that had seemed so formidable simply melted away when faced with forces that actually believed in their cause. This wasn't military failure. It was systemic collapse. Decades of outsourcing military responsibility had left Italian states hollow. They had impressive facades, but no substance. When pressure arrived, there was nothing underneath to resist it. But Machiavelli's insight goes beyond historical military analysis. He saw a pattern that repeats across every domain of power. The moment you become dependent on others for your essential capabilities, you stop being a principal and become a client. And clients, no matter how well treated, are never truly free. Think about this in modern terms. How many people do you know who have outsourced their income to a single employer? Who depend entirely on one relationship for emotional stability? Who rely completely on others for their reputation, their skills, their sense of worth? They think they're being practical, efficient, smart. They're actually making themselves vulnerable in ways they don't even recognize. Because dependency creates leverage, and leverage creates control. The person who controls your income controls your behavior. The person who controls your emotional well-being controls your decisions. The person who controls your reputation controls your future. You might think you're free because you're comfortable, but comfort built on dependency is just a more pleasant form of captivity. Machiavelli would look at the modern world and see the same patterns everywhere. Corporations that outsource their core functions to contractors. Countries that depend on foreign military bases for security. Individuals who build their entire identity around jobs they don't control. Relationships that could end tomorrow. Skills that belong to others. The tragedy is that most people recognize this pattern only after it's too late. When the contractor raises prices or changes terms. When the foreign ally decides your interests no longer align with theirs. When the employer decides you're expendable. When the relationship ends. When the platform changes its algorithm. When the system you depend on no longer needs you. That's when they discover what Machiavelli knew centuries ago. Borrowed power is an illusion. Rented strength is temporary. Outsourced capabilities are controlled by someone else's priorities, not yours. And in moments of crisis, when you need that power most, it belongs to whoever actually built it, not whoever merely used it. The alternative isn't isolation. It's not refusing all alliances or partnerships. It's building your own foundation first, developing your own capabilities before you leverage others, creating your own sources of strength before you supplement them with external resources. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said a prince must make war his only profession. Not that rulers should be constantly fighting, but that they must never stop building and maintaining their own capacity for decisive action. Because the moment you lose that capacity, you lose the ability to act independently. And independence is the foundation of all real power. Most people think power is about controlling others. Machiavelli understood that power is about controlling yourself. Your decisions, your resources, your capabilities, your fate. When you hand that control to someone else, even temporarily, even partially, you're not sharing power. You're surrendering it. The question isn't whether you'll ever need help from others. Of course you will. The question is whether that help supplements your own strength or replaces it. Whether you're building alliances from a position of independence or seeking salvation from a position of weakness. Because here's what separates the powerful from the powerless. The powerful use others' resources to amplify their own strength. The powerless use others' resources to replace their missing strength. One is multiplication. The other is substitution. And the difference determines whether you remain free or become enslaved. Let me show you how this plays out in the real world. Take someone building a business. They have two paths. Path 1, learn marketing, develop systems, build relationships, create value, establish reputation. It's slow, it's difficult. It requires years of grinding through failures and setbacks. Path 2, hire an agency, outsource the marketing, pay someone else to build the systems, rely on their network, depend on their expertise. Most people choose path 2. It seems smarter, faster, more efficient. Why struggle through the learning curve when you can buy the result? But what they don't see is the invisible transfer of power. The agency controls their customer flow. The contractor controls their systems. The network belongs to someone else. The expertise lives in someone else's head. Everything works fine until it doesn't. The agency raises prices or drops them as a client. The contractor leaves or changes terms. The network moves to a competitor. The expertise walks out the door. And suddenly, the business owner discovers they don't own a business. They own a dependency, a structure that collapses the moment the external support disappears. This is exactly what Machiavelli observed with mercenary armies. Italian rulers thought they were buying military capability. They were actually renting it. And when the rental agreement ended, they had nothing left but empty treasuries and defenseless borders. The modern economy is built on this same illusion. Companies that exist entirely on borrowed capabilities. Individuals whose skills are completely outsourced to tools and platforms they don't control. Nations whose defense depends on allies who might not always share their interests. Look at what's happening right now across Africa. Country after country is hiring Russian mercenaries to handle their security problems. The Wagner Group promises immediate military effectiveness without the hassle of building domestic capabilities. No need to train soldiers, develop doctrine, create military institutions. Just write a check and let the professionals handle it. But watch what happens next. The mercenaries don't just fight the enemies. They start making political demands. They influence government decisions. They create dependencies that go far beyond their original contracts. The client states think they're buying security. They're actually selling sovereignty, one contract at a time. The pattern is always the same. The mercenary force becomes more powerful than the state that hired it. The auxiliary troops start serving their own agenda rather than their clients. The dependency deepens until the client can't function without the contractor. And at that point, who's really in charge? Machiavelli saw this coming centuries ago. He watched Pope Julius II make the same mistake. The Pope needed military help against Ferrara, so he brought in Spanish auxiliaries. Powerful, professional, effective. They helped him win battles. They also put him completely under Spanish influence. The Pope got his military victory and lost his political independence in the same transaction. This is the hidden cost of outsourced power. You might achieve your immediate objective, but you lose control of your long-term destiny. The auxiliary force that saves you today becomes the master that controls you tomorrow. And once that dynamic is established, it's almost impossible to reverse. Because here's what most people don't understand about dependency. It's not static. It compounds. The more you rely on external capabilities, the less you develop internal ones. The less internal capability you have, the more you need external support. The more external support you need, the more control you surrender. It's a downward spiral disguised as efficiency. Think about individuals who outsource their thinking to algorithms, their decision-making to apps, their social connections to platforms, their skills to artificial intelligence. They think they're becoming more capable. They're actually becoming more dependent. And dependency, no matter how comfortable, is still a form of weakness. The alternative isn't to reject all outside help. It's to maintain the capability to survive without it. To use external resources as amplifiers, not replacements. To build alliances that enhance your power rather than substitute for it. This is what Machiavelli called being armed with your own arms. Your own arms don't have to be military. In the modern world, they're whatever capabilities are essential to your survival and success. Your skills, your relationships, your resources, your reputation, your systems. The things that would still be there if everyone else disappeared tomorrow. Most people never ask themselves this question. If every external support system vanished overnight, what would I have left? What could I still accomplish? How would I survive? The answer reveals whether you've built genuine power or just accumulated comfortable dependencies. Machiavelli was obsessed with this test because he lived through Italy's collapse. He watched states that looked powerful from the outside crumble the moment their external supports were removed. All the wealth, all the culture, all the sophistication meant nothing when the hired armies walked away and the borrowed strength evaporated. The lesson isn't just historical, it's personal. Every dependency you create is a potential point of failure. Every capability you outsource is a source of vulnerability. Every system you don't control is a system that could be turned against you. But here's that mean working alone. It means maintaining twist that most people miss. Building your own capabilities doesn't the ability to work alone while choosing to work with others. There's a massive difference between cooperation from strength and dependency from weakness. When you cooperate from strength, you bring value to the relationship. You have options. You can walk away if the terms become unfavorable. You're choosing the partnership because it multiplies your capabilities, not because you can't function without it. When you depend from weakness, you need the relationship more than you contribute to it. You have no alternatives. You accept whatever terms are offered because the alternative is collapse. You're trapped in the partnership by your own limitations. Machiavelli understood this distinction perfectly. He didn't oppose alliances. He opposed dependencies disguised as alliances. The difference is leverage. In a true alliance, both parties benefit and both parties can survive independently. In a dependency relationship, one party needs the other more than they're needed in return. This dynamic shows up everywhere. Employment relationships where one person has skills and options while another just has needs and desperation. Business partnerships where one party brings unique capabilities while the other brings only money. Political alliances where one nation has strategic assets while another has only geographic location. The party with genuine capabilities holds the power. The party with only needs holds the vulnerability. And over time, vulnerability always serves strength, whether it wants to or not. That's why Machiavelli insisted that a prince must never stop studying the art of war. Not because war is desirable, but because the ability to fight independently is what preserves the option to choose peace. The ruler who can't defend himself can't negotiate from strength. He can only accept whatever terms stronger powers decide to offer. In modern terms, this means never stop developing the capabilities that make you valuable. Never stop building the systems that make you independent. Never stop creating the options that make you free. Because the moment you stop building your own strength, you start depending on someone else's. and their strength always comes with their priorities attached. The most dangerous lie in the modern world is that specialization means dependency. That efficiency requires outsourcing. That smart people focus on their strengths and delegate everything else. This thinking turns capable people into specialized components in someone else's machine. Machiavelli would see right through this logic. He'd recognize it as the same reasoning that convinced Italian rulers to hire mercenaries instead of training citizens. The same efficiency argument that led to military dependency and political subjugation. The same false choice between competence and control. The truth is more complex and more demanding. You can specialize without becoming dependent. You can outsource without surrendering control. You can cooperate without losing independence, but only if you maintain the capability to function alone when necessary. This is the foundation of all sustainable power. Not the ability to control others, but the ability to control your own fate. Not the capacity to dominate, but the capacity to survive and thrive independently of others' goodwill. When you have that foundation, cooperation becomes a choice rather than a necessity. Partnerships become opportunities rather than lifelines. And other people's strength amplifies your own instead of replacing it. But without that foundation, every relationship becomes a dependency. Every partnership becomes a trap. Every alliance becomes a chain. You think you're building a network, but you're actually constructing a web that holds you more tightly than it holds anyone else. This is why Machiavelli's most chilling observation still echoes through the corridors of power today. He said that mercenaries and auxiliaries are not just useless, they are dangerous. Not because they're incompetent, but because they're competent in service of their own interests, not yours. The successful mercenary becomes your greatest threat. The effective auxiliary becomes your silent master. Because power once concentrated doesn't just disappear when the contract ends. It transfers. And it transfers to whoever actually built the capabilities you thought you were buying. Look at what's happening in corporate America right now. Companies that have outsourced their entire IT infrastructure to cloud providers, they think they've bought efficiency and scalability. What they've actually bought is dependency so complete that they can't function for a single day without their provider's permission. The cloud provider owns their data, controls their access, sets their prices, determines their features, changes their terms whenever it benefits the provider, not the client. The company executives think they're customers. The cloud provider knows they're hostages. This is the modern version of the auxiliary trap. The service provider becomes more essential to your operation than you are. They know more about your systems than your own employees do. They have capabilities you can't replicate. And slowly, inevitably, they start making decisions that should be yours. The most brutal part isn't the dependency itself. It's how comfortable it becomes. How natural it feels to let someone else handle the complicated parts. How reasonable it seems to focus on your core business while professionals manage everything else. But Machiavelli understood something that comfort obscures. The complicated parts are where the real power lives. The technical details that seem boring are actually the levers that control everything else. When you hand those levers to someone else, you're not delegating responsibility. You're surrendering authority. Think about individuals who have outsourced their financial security to investment advisors, their social connections to algorithms, their decision-making to experts, their learning to educational institutions, their entertainment to platforms, their communication to applications. Each outsourcing decision seems rational in isolation. Why spend time learning about investments when professionals can handle it better? Why struggle to meet people organically when apps can match you efficiently? Why research decisions when experts have already done the work? But the cumulative effect is devastating. You wake up one day to discover that you don't know how to manage your own money. You can't form relationships without digital intermediation. You can't make decisions without expert validation. You can't learn without institutional structure. You can't entertain yourself without algorithmic curation. You've become a consumer of your own life instead of the creator of it. And consumers, no matter how well served, are always dependent on their suppliers. They're never truly in control. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said that auxiliary troops are more dangerous than mercenaries. Mercenaries at least maintain the pretense of working for you. Auxiliaries work with you while serving someone else. The relationship looks collaborative, but the power flows in only one direction. Modern auxiliary relationships are everywhere. The social media platform that amplifies your voice while controlling your reach. The payment processor that enables your business while monitoring your transactions. The search engine that connects you with information while determining what information you see. These aren't just service providers. They're power brokers. They decide who gets access to what. They set the rules for participation. They determine the terms of engagement, and they can change any of those decisions at any time, for any reason, without your consent. The companies and individuals who depend on these platforms think they're using them. The platforms know they're training them to accept dependency, training them to operate within constraints they didn't choose, training them to compete for attention and resources controlled by others. This is how modern auxiliary power works. It doesn't conquer you directly. It makes itself indispensable to your success. It becomes the infrastructure your ambitions depend on. And once that dependency is established, it doesn't need to threaten you. It just needs to change the rules whenever your interests diverge from theirs. Machiavelli saw this pattern with Italian city-states that invited foreign powers to help with local conflicts. The foreign armies didn't invade. They were invited. They didn't impose themselves. They were requested. They didn't threaten immediate conquest. They offered immediate assistance. But assistance always comes with influence. Influence always comes with agendas. And agendas always serve the assistant more than the assisted. The Italian rulers thought they were gaining powerful allies. They were actually importing their future masters. The modern equivalent is everywhere. Developing nations that accept foreign military bases for security. Corporations that adopt foreign technology standards for efficiency. Individuals who embrace foreign platforms for convenience. Each decision seems beneficial in the moment. Each decision transfers a piece of sovereignty to someone else's priorities. The pattern is so consistent that Machiavelli turned it into a law. Never rely on others' armies. Not because others are evil, but because others serve their own interests first. And when your interests conflict with theirs, their capabilities work against you, not for you. This is why he insisted that a wise prince would rather lose with his own forces than win with borrowed ones, because defeat with your own forces teaches you how to improve. Victory with borrowed forces teaches you how to depend. One builds strength. The other builds weakness disguised as success. The modern world has forgotten this distinction. We celebrate efficiency over independence. We prioritize convenience over control. We choose comfort over capability. And we call this progress while wondering why we feel increasingly powerless in our own lives. But there's a path back to genuine strength. It starts with recognizing the difference between tools you control and systems that control you. Between capabilities you own and services you rent. Between partnerships that enhance your power and dependencies that replace it. The first step is audit. Look at every system you depend on. every service you can't function without, every relationship that would cripple you if it ended, every skill you've outsourced, every decision you've delegated, every capability you've abandoned. Ask yourself the Machiavellian question. If this external support disappeared tomorrow, what would happen to my power? Would I be weakened, but survive? Or would I collapse entirely? The honest answer reveals whether you've built genuine strength or accumulated comfortable dependencies. Whether you're a principal or a client. Whether you control your fate or someone else controls it for you. The second step is reconstruction. Not isolation, but foundation building. Developing the core capabilities that make you valuable. Creating the systems that make you independent. Building the skills that make you dangerous to ignore and expensive to replace. This doesn't mean doing everything yourself. It means maintaining the ability to do the essential things yourself while choosing to collaborate on the supplementary things. It means keeping the levers of power in your own hands while sharing the work of pulling them. The third step is strategic cooperation. Forming alliances from strength rather than weakness. Choosing partnerships that multiply your capabilities rather than replacing them. Working with others because you want to, not because you have to. The choice is yours. You can keep renting strength from others and calling it smart. You can keep outsourcing your power and calling it efficient. You can keep depending on systems you don't control and calling it progress. Or you can do what Machiavelli demanded of every ruler who wanted to survive. Build your own arms. Control your own fate. Never again mistake borrowed power for real strength. Because in the end, only what you build yourself truly belongs to you.